Welcome to today's video. Before beginning, please read the trade disclaimer. Please understand that this is not financial advice, just my commentary and opinion. Everyone. So in this video, we're going to look at the falling wedge pattern. And one of the key things to look for is we start to see like a squeeze in the price, creating a wedge type shape. And in this case, you've had price come from the top or even the bottom, create point 1, point 2 and point 3, and then we start to create a wedge formation. And then what we're technically doing are wish to target the breakout of point 5. Okay, so we've got two different scenarios on the breakout. So one scenario is price breaks out, retests the breakout point number 5, and then moves to its top potential target. The other point we have is price breaks out from 0.5, retests the high of the wedge, and then moves to its potential target. Okay, so these are the type of scenarios we're looking for. And again, obviously, if this doesn't happen, price can obviously come down, test the lower part of the wedge, and and try again, or even break down. And this is why it's important again to have our stops in place to protect us from getting into a position where the wedge fails to play out in a bullish scenario and effectively drops down to hit our stops or continues to create a bearish pattern. Okay, so let's have a look at areas for our take profit. So to work out a take profit, we take the high of 0.1 and use the low of 0.2. Okay, then we take this, so let's make this straight, and then put this on the potential breakout area. And then our target for take profit is approximately this, the length of 1 to 2 in height, from 5 to the high. Okay, so roughly equal proportion. Then we can mark out our line for a profit target, so approximately there. Okay, so now I'm going to remove this. Now what you want to look at is areas of potential stops. So let's show you these. So one you have is near the level of 0.4, which would be the last potential low. The other one can also be the middle of the wedge. The other one can be on the breakout level itself. Understanding that all these are set based on where our entry will be. So you wouldn't enter and have the stop at entry straight away, as that wouldn't make sense. So let's now look at our entry points. So what I would look at is using the long risk to reward tool. If our original entry is on the breakout of 0.5 and our stop is at 0.4 and we target the high, so let's look at maybe potential scenario 1. In this case, price breaks out, you could potentially have a take profit here, comes down, you could potentially re-enter. But in this sort of case, because your stop is here, you do not get stopped out, and then price moves to its potential target. Okay, this gives us, in this case, a nice risk to reward of roughly 4.19 to 1. So that would be a nice, good trade. If we now look at this from another point where we have 0.2, you can see in this case, if price did come down, tests the outside of the wedge as support and then moved up, we wouldn't be stopped out. And if for any reason, if price did come down and stop out where we broke lower than this, then I wouldn't be looking for a long trade, because effectively what you've done is you've now then would have made a lower low. So in that case, this stop protects us from that. Okay, so let's look at another possible entry based on the stop. Okay, so let's remove this, and this time what we're going to do is we're going to enter a long position on the potential breakout retest of the lower part of the wedge. Okay, and here we may use our stop loss on this low. Okay, and our target can be this high. So what we want to look at in scenario 1, you can see if we had done this, we could potentially miss the trade. Okay, and that's one thing that can possibly happen, but is to keep that in your mind. Okay, then in scenario 2, what would happen is we come down, potentially retest that bottom, and we fill our trade and we hit target and we get a higher risk to reward. So those are, you're looking at the pros and cons, and again the stop is at same 0.4. Okay, here you wouldn't want to do any stop any tighter, because if you did, then you could get a little wick down and effectively stop you out. So what we're going to do is look at another scenario. Okay, so now say we wish to enter on a retest of the break. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll mark that retest area, and what we're hoping to do is effectively enter a trade for a long position. We say price may go up, and then as it retests that break area, I want to enter on the slightly confirmed point. Okay, so we go to the high, we target this. Our stop loss again could be 0.4, and in this case, if we look at our scenario, this works out really nicely. If we look at scenario 2, again, this will still work out quite nicely. If our stop is, say, in the middle of the wedge, you'd be fine for both scenarios. However, if you could potentially set your stop loss on the low of the test, so if price does test this point and then break up, the midpoint, and that could be your entry, and you again then get a nice risk to reward. There will be people who may potentially target a more riskier move, which I haven't shown in the previous videos, simply because I don't believe that the risk is worth it, because it's a very high risk trade. So effectively what they may do is may enter on the bounce of the low and then set a stop loss probably 1 to 2% below the wedge itself. Now the problem with that is if you do enter here and price makes a point where it does come down, tests, rejects to break down, and then potentially could stop you out because it's done this sort of pattern. If you have entered here, the other thing that could happen straight away, it could just come back down, stop you out in an instant, and price could then just go lower. So that is the type of risk you could potentially end up taking, and that's not something I would advise anybody to take when looking to trade any of these patterns. So hence why I haven't shown it before, but you may see some people show this, but the risk is far more greater of getting stopped out. So if you're an early trader or a beginner, that may be a pattern you don't, an entry you don't want to take, because effectively you are trying to capitalize on the lower potential bounce to, potentially gain a few percent more. Okay, so this is the falling wedge pattern, and now we're going to look at another falling wedge pattern, but this is it's called, well, it's not falling wedge, it's called a rising wedge, pardon me. So it's the reverse of the falling wedge. So we will see you in the next video. Thank you.